Good afternoon, all of you out there celebrating Kansas Day. I am very excited to welcome you to this session called Made by Kansans. This session is brought to you by Miss Ashley Figueroa, who is the education coordinator for the Kansas Historical Society. She's joining us today from Topeka, Kansas. She has her undergraduate degree from KU in American Studies and her master's in Library and Informational Sciences from Emporia State University. We are excited for you guys to get to learn from her. Please take advantage of our Q&A. If you have Q&A, if you click on the Q&A, you can enter questions throughout the presentation that we can have our presenter answer for you, as well as please make sure to put in your school, your teacher's name, grade level, and how many attendees are viewing with you today into that Q&A. We appreciate you being here, and without further ado, I will bring Miss Ashley onto the screen.
Alrighty, thank you for the introduction. All right, so as she said, my name's Ashley Figueroa. I'm the education coordinator at the Kansas Historical Society, and today we'll be looking at some of the contributions Kansans across the state have made in their respective industries. So let's go ahead and explore items made by Kansans. Alrighty, so the first invention I will highlight is a pretty important one. It's the integrated circuit or the microchip. This small item revolutionized technology in modern versions can be found in smartphones, computers, televisions, and more. So we wouldn't be able to do this live stream today without the microchip. And it was invented by a man named Jack Kilby. So Jack Kilby grew up in Great Bend, Kansas. He discovered his passion for electrical engineering after a snowstorm knocked out the power, and he had to assist his father, who operated the local power company, with using ham radios to communicate with his customers. So then after that, he became fascinated with the power of technology and went on to obtain both a bachelor's and master's degree in electrical engineering. After college, he began working at Texas Instruments, where he studied how to reduce the number of wires required to run a computer. And he finally came up with the idea of an integrated circuit during a 2 week period when all of his coworkers were on vacation. So he was just by himself and he had all the time in the world to focus on this invention. And here are some pictures of what his prototypes looked like. This first one is at the Smithsonian Museum, and this one over here is at the Bullock Museum, State History Museum in Texas. So Kilby created three types of circuits to test his idea. The final version was called the phase shift oscillator, and multiple prototypes were created, but only six are in existence. The first professional presentation of the microchip was in 1959. Also to note, a man named Robert Noyce in California came up with a similar idea, though Noyce received his patent before Kilby. They are both credited as having independently conceived of the idea. And Jack Kilby was quoted saying, "While Robert and I followed our own paths, we worked hard together to achieve commercial acceptance for integrated circuits. If he were still living, I have no doubt he would have shared this prize," speaking about the Nobel Prize he won in 2000. So the idea of the microchip led to the invention in 1958, and for his work, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in the year 2000. By the end of his career, Jack Kilby had more than 60 US patents. His other inventions include the handheld electronic calculator and the thermal printer. So the calculator on the left is a 1967 prototype of the calculator created by Kilby and the team that he led. The final device was patented in 1974. If you use a calculator in your classroom, it's probably a TI calculator that we all use. And then thermal printers are used every day for things like receipts. A few other awards that Jack Kilby won. He won the National Medal of Science in 1970. He was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 1982, and he was also a member of the National Academy of Engineering. So very impressive and successful in his work.
We have one question in here. Why did he invent the microchip?
Yeah, so a problem that a lot of people in engineering were experiencing was that there are too many uh, parts to computers, to electronic devices, and it got to the point where they couldn't create large items because it took too much parts. It was too complicated to make. So their goal was to reduce the number of parts to make it more practical to engineer and manufacture. Alrighty, so we'll go ahead and move on to second item, which is Hire boots. Charles H. Hire of Olathe, Kansas, is credited as one of the first creators of the cowboy boots, one of the very first people. His company history states that a Colorado cowboy stopped by Hire's cobbling shop on the way home from a Kansas City stockyard in 1875, and the man requested a new pair of boots that were different from the standard Civil War style boots at the time. So some specific differences he wanted was a pointed toe to slide into stirrups on the saddle, a heel to hold onto that stirrup, and then a high top with scalloped front and back. Sort of see the scallop right there, to make putting on the boot easier for them. Before long, Charles and his brother Edward Hire were receiving requests for these boots from all over the West. Here's a picture of Charles Henry Hire. So, like I said, he started this company with his brother, but they learned boot making from their father, who was a German immigrant who started practicing shoemaking after moving to the US in the mid 1800s. Brothers opened up their own shoemaking shop in Olathe, and they made cowboy boots for cattlemen, rodeo performers, and movie stars such as Buffalo Bill Cody, Gene Autry, and Will Rogers. During World War I, the company made boots for officers at Fort Leavenworth and Camp Funston here in Kansas. Hire operated until 1977 when the company was sold to a different company down in Texas, and the former Hire employees continued their work of shoemaking at the Olathe Boot Company, which is still in business. Uh, and Zach Lawless, the great great grandson of Charles H. Hire, reclaimed the Hire trademark and relaunched the company in 2010. So now people can once again purchase cowboy boots with the Hire name. This pair of black cowboy boots here dates to around 1900 and were previously displayed in our gallery. They are one of many boots, many Hire boots that we have in our collection here. And this black and white image here, you can see the Hire brothers. Edward or Ed is on the left, and Charles is on the right. Any questions about the Hire brand?
We do not have any questions in the Q&A.
All right, we'll keep moving along then. All right, our next invention or innovation is the Nellie Dawn brand. Nellie Dawn was a popular women's fashion brand in the early to late mid 1900s. It was one of the largest dress manufacturers in the US and owes its success to a woman from Southeast Kansas. Her name is Ellen or Nell Quinlan Donnelly Reed. She was born and raised in Parsons, Kansas. She began sewing in the early 1900s, making dresses for herself and her friends. Here's a picture of Nell Donnelly. She designed her first frock in 1919 and sold her first line of dresses that same year to Peck's Dry Goods store in Kansas City. By the 1930s, the Nellie Dawn label had become a multi-million-dollar company. At their height, the company was making 5,000 dresses a day and earned $3.5 million in sales. During World War II, Nellie Dawn was one of the largest manufacturers of women's military and work clothing. In the late 1940s, they built one of their largest dress manufacturing plants in Kansas City. The Donnelly Garment Company was ahead of its time in terms of employee benefits. So the company provided their employees with clean, safe working conditions, above average wages, health insurance, pensions, and more. Um, and Nell Reed, the founder, stayed with the Donnelly Garment Company until 1956 when she sold the company after 40 years. But the Nellie Dawn brand continued until they filed for bankruptcy in 1978. This pink dress off to the left is one that we have in our collection at the Kansas Museum of History, and is the only one we have in our collection. It's a recent item we got within the past maybe year and a half or so.
We have a question about the cowboy boots.
Mhm.
Were the cowboy boots originally created for girls as well as men, for women as well as men?
I believe there were some female cowboys, cowgirls, and ranchers that would have worn the boots. Anyone who worked with cattle or worked uh, out west would have worn those boots. Yeah.
Awesome. And then we have one about Nellie Dawn. How and why did she start making dresses?
Dressmaking was very popular for women in the time period. It helped save money as well. So that if they didn't have money to afford to buy their dresses, they would just make them at home, which I believe is what Ellie Dawn did.
Awesome. And there's one more that says, how
Mhm.
old was she when she made her first dress?
Ooh, that I do not know off the top of my head. I want to maybe I think she was a teenager, I believe, mid-teens.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So our next one is one that you might recognize if you have pets in the household. It is Hill's Pet Nutrition. The company was founded over 75 years ago when a New Jersey veterinarian named Dr. Mark Morris partnered with a Topeka business to produce and package a new dog food formula. Dr. Morse was inspired by a blind man named Morris Frank and his guide dog Buddy. Buddy was a German Shepherd that was suffering from kidney failure, and he asked Dr. Morse, or not Buddy the dog, but Morris Frank asked Dr. Morris for help. And Dr. Morris believed the dog's illness was due to poor nutrition, so he developed a new pet food to help treat his illness. And Buddy's condition did improve after eating the new food. Important to note. Just so Dr. Mark Morris developed the original nutritional formula in 1939. He moved to Kansas after partnering with the Hill Packing Company of Topeka in the 1940s. The first line of food was called K9KD. When Dr. Morris Sr., who is pictured here on the left, passed away, his son, Dr. Mark Morris Jr., continued his work and created the popular Science Diet line for healthy pets. And the company is now one of the top dog food brands, offering a range of diets and treats based on age ranges and health conditions. And unlike many companies that originate in Kansas but eventually move on to a different state, Hills is still made in Kansas. They have manufacturing sites in Topeka, Emporia, and Tonganoxie, and there's also a research center in Topeka, and their company's headquarters are still in Overland Park, Kansas. So still a Kansas company.
We have a couple of of questions here.
Mhm.
One goes back a little bit to the higher boots. Were they made to be waterproof?
Uh, I would say they're fairly waterproof. They were all made out of leather. So I don't think your foot would have gotten soaked, but there was no like, special treatment, I believe, to make them fully waterproof.
Okay. And then this was about Nellie Dawn. What fabric did she use to make the dresses?
All sorts of fabric, cotton, silk. I know. Let me go back to the page that has all the dresses on it. Oop, there we go. So yeah, a variety of fabrics were used, like linens, cottons. This one looks more like it's a silk dress, perhaps. But yeah, lots of different types.
Okay. And so most of the, oh, how did she get chosen to make the women's military clothing?
I assume it was just because of the size of their manufacturing. They were one of the largest dress manufacturers at that time. Um, so they had the capabilities to do so.
Okay. And then on to the dog food, the Hills dog food. What was in the dog food when he first made it that was different?
Ooh. I do not know that answer. That is a good question. I wasn't able to find like an exact formula for the dog food. They might
They
have
probably
kept
don't
that
give
a
that out,
secret.
huh?
Yeah, they probably kept that a secret. Um,
Um, We have a question that says, was Hills ever in Springfield, Missouri? We have a student who thought it was there too.
They might have had manufacturing plants there, um, but the Dr. Mark Morse started his practice in New Jersey before moving it to Kansas. But there's a chance there was manufacturing plants there, yeah.
Okay. Do you know where the name for the company Hills came from?
It came from the original Topeka com packing company, which was Hill's Packing Company, I believe. Yes, the Hill Packing Company of Topeka. So he partnered with that company to manufacture the food and distribute it across the country. So that's where the name The Hill came from. And I believe that company was named after the founder.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here's one. Why were the higher boots in an art gallery?
Um, if they were in our gallery, ours is a historical museum. So we have artifacts from all over Kansas history, different topics, different eras of time, and that's where they were on display at our gallery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's all we have for right now.
Alrighty. So we have one more, and it is the icy. So this classic slushy drink got its start at a Dairy Queen in Coffeyville, Kansas, when a man named Omar Knedlick um, had a soda machine that was broken, so he stored bottles of soda in the freezer to keep them cold, which resulted in partially frozen slushes. And Omar patented his frozen drink machine in 1962. The original design consisted of a stainless steel barrel with coils of coolant wrapped around it. And this design has remained relatively unchanged since its creation. To name the drink, Omar held a contest which resulted in the name Icy. So, had a little contest, and a customer came up with the name that we all know today. And to produce the machine on a larger scale, he worked with a company down in Texas, and the first official icy machine was sold in 1960. A few years later, in 1965, the convenience store chain 7-Eleven licensed the machine for their stores across the country, but they renamed the beverage to Slurpee, which made the type of drink more popular, but they're the same, just they changed the name of them. And the Icy brand continues today and is headquartered in California now, but they have service centers all around the world. We have a man from Coffeyville, Kansas to thank for that. All right, well, that is all I have for today, but you can visit the Kansas Museum of History when we reopen later this year to learn more about Kansas innovations. We'll have a entire exhibit basically focusing on things that were made or started in Kansas. All right. Any other questions?
I don't, oh, maybe. Here we go. Oh, what was the first flavor of icy? Do you know? Or how many original flavors there might have been?
Ooh, I think cherry was one of the original flavors, maybe root beer as well. Yeah, I think
Okay.
those were two that I saw.
And another higher question. Did the company also make spurs?
Oh, I don't think they made spurs. I think they just focused on leather goods. They started out as a cobbler sh or as a yeah, cobbler shop, which they focus on leather goods, shoes, handbags, belts, stuff like that.
Okay. Was the original name Icy? And where was the first original Icy?
The I would say the original name was Icy. That's where it got its start. That's the name Omar Knedlick uh, helped come up with. And the original Icy machine, I don't know where it was sold to. I don't think they had that information available, but it was in 1960.
Does Hills make anything besides dog food and treats?
Oh, think for the most part it's dog food, treats. They have specialized diets, like prescription diets, if the dog is sick. Um, I think that's the majority of it.
Is it only made for dogs and cats, or do they have food for other animals?
I've only seen dogs and cats foods. I have yet to see food for any other animals.
Okay. One person, and I'm sure a lot of our kids out there want to know if you know what the weirdest flavor of icy is.
Ooh, I honestly might be a bad confession. I don't think I've ever had an icy, so I wouldn't know. I've only had probably had cherry in my life. Um, I'm sure there's some weird ones out there though.
That's funny. Um, I think when I was a kid, we used to, and I'm old, guys. Uh, we used to go when they had an icy machine, and we would put a little bit of each one in our drink, and we thought that that was the best thing ever. So
Yeah.
I'm sure some of our students out there on this call have done that as well.
Hmm.
Uh, one student wants to know, how did they make the 1967 handheld calculator?
Ooh. Go back to that slide so you can see it. I know Jack Kilby worked with a team of inventors on that. Um, I don't know exactly how they developed this machinery, but it started out, calculators were very large, cumbersome to carry around, and they needed something that could be transported easily. That's that's all I know. That's a good question. I'm gonna look into that later.
Uh-huh. I'm really thankful for the person who invented that handheld calculator. It helped me
Yeah,
get through high school and college
same.
and
Yeah,
and get my doctorate.
yeah.
Um,
I use the TI calculators all throughout school, so.
yep. Uh, let's see. Did Nellie have any children?
She had one or two children, I believe. Yes.
And did she only make dresses?
I think she made other women's clothing as well, not just dresses.
What was, do you know, do you feel like you're on Jeopardy right now? I feel like we're
I
on
do kind
Jeopardy.
of, yeah.
Do you know the approximate cost of the boots?
Oh, I do not. The company existed for a period of time, so the price would have changed. I do not know the original cost of the boots, though. Great questions. Things for me to look up later.
I know these are, guys, these are all great
Oh,
questions. And the good thing is when you have creativity and questions, you can do a lot of awesome research to come up with
mm-hmm.
some good answers. So
Yeah,
these are good things for you
absolutely.
guys to think about in class too. Um, one question says, do you know why the icy has a polar bear on it?
That might have just been a really cool mascot, honestly.
Mhm. And do you know what the microchip was originally used for?
I think it might have been a like a military development. Jack Kilby worked with the military to develop new technologies. I think that might have been a big push for it, but it was used in all technology, all computers.
Okay. Here's a good question. And for maybe some of our littler listeners, I'm going to kind of explain it. So it says, did Hire Boots make custom boots or mass produce boots? So could you explain for our maybe younger students what mass production is versus customization?
Mhm. So customization would be single person walks into a store, they get their uh, measurements taken on their foot, and a individual or a team of individuals creates that boot specifically for you. Mass production is where there's more of like an assembly line, so everyone has a different role where they make like the sides of the boots, the sole of the boots, and they are a standardized sizing. So like what you would buy in a store today. If you walk into like a Kohl's or a J.C. Penney's, you buy a pair of shoes. Those are mass-produced shoes. They are able to be produced on a very large scale to sell thousands, if not millions of them. And higher boots, they started out with customizations and then eventually moved into the more mass-produced style of shoes as the time went on.
Awesome. And that was a very good question, guys.
Yeah, I
Um, is the icy made with fruit or is it just a sugar substance?
think it's a like a sugar syrup, probably. Yeah.
Right. Well, I think that we have exhausted our list of questions. Miss Ashley, thank you so much for joining us today and teaching us about things that are made in Kansas. And for all of our listeners out there, please remember that you can always visit the Kansas History Museum and find out more information. And living history is a great way to find out what has been made in Kansas. And maybe some of you will be the next inventors in one of these presentations someday. So always be creative and always be innovative and always be thinking. We hope that you guys have enjoyed Kansas Day today and are going to continue celebrating and have a great day. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.